Hey friends, I'm Patrick. I create .NET and Blazor tutorials here on my channel, and welcome to the second part of the full stack tutorial for a Blazor WebAssembly application. Blazor WebAssembly on the client, Web API on the server, also Entity Framework with code first migration and a SQL Server database on the back end side. And we've got a shared project as usual for our models there. Without further ado, let's continue with the second part. All right, so we see our data here in the QuickGrid. The read part of the CRUD operations is done even with persistence with the database, right? So now the next step is actually creating, updating, and deleting a video game. And for that, what I like to do is create first another page, right? So right click the pages folder, add another Razor component, and here let's just call this edit video game. I know we can also use this to create a video game, for instance, because in here we will add a form, an edit form. We'll use the EditForm component of Blazor with built-in components like the input text field, but you will see this in a minute. And again, we can use this to edit a video game as well as creating one. And of course, we can also add a delete button there to then remove it in the database. Now, what I want to do, or the way I want to do this is, again, this is another page, right? So add page, and now here, let me just call this video game, not games, it's now video game. And also another one, that's also one of the many beauties of Blazor. We just add another route here, video game, and then add a parameter, and that'll be an ID with a little constraint. So this has to be an integer, because when we are doing it like that, we can check for this parameter, and when the ID is set, we know that we want to edit the video game, and when the ID is not set, then we know that we want to use this form to create a video game. We can also do this by changing the title, for instance. But first we need the parameter. So here now we add prop int, could be nullable, so a nullable integer with the name ID. And we also add an attribute here, which is parameter. So with that, we know that this is a parameter that can be set, in this case via the route. And here now we can ask for that. So if the ID is null, for instance, then we say our title here is create a new video game. And we can also use the page title component here to really set the title of the window, the tab, whatever it is. So maybe also create a new video game. And then we also got the else case, of course. So in here now, what we can say is, let me just copy that. I'm a lazy developer. So here now we can say edit. And then actually I want to have the game available there. So let's also add the video game, which by default, let's say, is a new video game with the title new game. All right. So in here now, we just say game title, like that actually. And same thing here. All right, and now comes the edit form. Real quick, the .NET Web Academy is open only for today. Yes, this is the last day, 1 day left for enrollment in the .NET Web Academy. After that, it will be closed. So that's your chance if you want to dive deep into Blazor WebAssembly, a web API, entity framework, SQL Server, deployment with Azure, designing with Tailwind CSS, Git for source control, many more stuff, and a great community already, then maybe you want to check out the link in the video description. Thank you very much for considering. And now let's continue with the tutorial. So here, edit form renders a form element that cascades an edit form edit context to descendants. Well, in essence, this just means that we can give this thing a model. So model, and then this will be our game in this case. And here now we can access the properties of this game. So for instance, we just add a div with a label. And here we say this label is for the title of the game. Say title like that. And then we use another built-in component from Blazor for all that input stuff. You can see it here. We've got an input checkbox, date, file number, and so on. And by the way, if you hear strange noises in the background, this is my little baby girl. She's, well, when you're watching this, maybe 6 weeks old. So please excuse me. Please accept my apologies. But she's currently in her baby sling, sleeping. And this is not the only time I can make this video here. So I hope that's okay. Anyways, input text, for instance, for simple text stuff. And the ID now, again, would be almost the title. And now we want to bind some data here. So we say bind value. And this now would be our game title, like that. And we can add a bootstrap class because we've got bootstrap here by default. And this is a form control. So maybe we can already have a look. Let's just save that. Restart the application. And now without the S, we see create a new video game and edit new edit. Where comes this from? There it is. I'll restart it again. All right, and now we see create a new video game because we haven't set any ID, right? And here now the title, we can change the title. Now if we add an ID, like 1 for instance, we see edit new game. New game is still the name of the video game here, but in a couple of minutes, what we will do is when we get an ID here actually, and I opened the window, there's also some noise out there. Please apologize, but it's really, really hot in here. Anyways, what we want to do is when this parameter has been set, then we want to make another web service call to our API and then get the game with the provided ID. I think you get the idea. And you also see that the form actually already works. Isn't that nice? So now what we have to do is actually, again, copy and paste some stuff for my lazy dev friends here. And the next thing now is the publisher. So publisher it is. Also here. Publisher. Really simple examples here, right? Now in the .NET Web Academy, of course, this is different. Go really, really deep in there. But here now, let's just say this is the release year, like that. And we can turn this into an input number field, actually. Release year and release year. All right, save that. Restart application. And we see the other fields. Isn't that nice? All right, and now the next thing is actually a submit button. So let me just go into another line. And here we add again a button, type submit. All right. And the class bootstrap button primary. And here now, let's say, just call this safe. All right. And what will happen then when the submit button is clicked, we will call a method. And this method has to be defined here on submit. We also have on valid submit, on invalid submit. This now means we can, of course, use validation here in the edit form, meaning when the release year, for instance, cannot be below 1900, something like that, or the title has to be set, it is required, then we can use on valid submit, because then the form will check if everything is valid. If not, We can display some error messages, of course, but I think for this quick tutorial here, that's maybe too much. So let's just use only on submit. Typically we can call this handle submit, and the function then would simply be async task handle submit. All right, and in there then what we'll do is we will, well, make web service calls again, but here now, just to test this, right line handle submit for instance. All right, so let's save that again, restart the application and open the console. All right, save, handle, submit. So this works in general. So we've got our form, we've got a button, and we also have our handle submit method. Now the next step would be, maybe before actually giving this thing real logic and storing the data or the changes in the database, maybe we can add something to our QuickGrid here, a button, maybe an edit button to, well, open the video game page, and also a create button to create a new video game, right? That would be nice, I guess. Now, the first thing we can add is a simple create button. So maybe on top here, we just say button create a video, or add a video game. Makes more sense, right? Add a video game. And then here we say add on click for the events, and here we call a method, actually, add a video game. All right, we have this function. Not yet, don't have it yet. So here now we can say void add a video game, and in here we would just navigate to the video game page. So for that, what we get with Blazor is the navigation manager. So add inject navigation manager, call this also a navigation manager. And now down here we just say navigation manager, navigate to, and then simply a video game. Save that, test it real quick, or we don't, because add video game, yeah, without the parenthesis, of course. Let's try that one more time. And I don't see the button. Yeah, because it's the wrong page. Oh my gosh. So here now we say create, oh no, maybe, yeah, actually, why not? Video games, and then again, let's go back here and put this down here. All right, and of course we have to inject the navigation manager. All right, and now maybe you think, well, games count, just because I see this here and I'm doing all this on the fly, so with no script and nothing. That's not the best solution here, right? Because it could be the case, of course, that we have no video games and we just want to add some, but still we see then the loading video games, let's say loading a screen. So maybe we can just say if games is null, and here we say we've got another list of video games, and this is indeed null at the beginning. And in that case, we can, no, we can set this. All right, now when the result is still null, then we see, yeah, we could then of course add something else, like really reacting to a null result. But again, I think for this tutorial, you get the idea. Let me just restart the application and let's see if we get a create video game button. Oh yeah, beautiful. Let me just change the class to button and then button primary. All right, restart and we get add video game. Last thing, maybe new line, please. Yeah, okay. Now there could be more space as well. Well, I think with Tailwind CSS, for instance, we can do this way better, but again, that would be too much for this tutorial. Save button is there. Okay, let's see. But you get the idea. We are now coming to this page, and create is just not the right term, I think. So here, let me just change that to add, because we're not really creating a new video game, right? Okay, so a bit messy to the second part here, maybe, of this tutorial. But anyways, it's late, and I'm just happy I can do this, find some time to do this here. So, add a new video game. We have our form, and we have a create button, but now it would be great to also create a button or add a button to edit a video game here in the QuickGrid. So what we can do is actually add a template column, the template, and here we can now add a button. So let me just copy this again, and now here we call this simply edit, for instance, and here now we add a lambda expression where we now say we want to edit the video game with the given ID, and in this case that would be the contexts. QuickGrid uses the term context here, and with that now we have the ID of the current video game, but now we need the function as well. So let's now say void edit video game with the game ID, and here now again use the navigation manager with now the ID. So here we add the ID. All right, let's have a quick look here. These are the parameters. That's that. And now let's see if we get an edit button. Yes, that's nice. So we can click here. We see the two. Of course, the title is not correct, but we see edit. And here that'll be game number 1. This is nice. So in essence, that's the first step for the client. Of course, we have to make the calls as well and add a delete button. But now let's just go to the web API and add the endpoints there. So we have get all video games. Now we can also create, update, and delete a video game. So let me just again copy that stuff. And let's say create. And for that now I would really like to add the HTTP request methods. So HTTP post would be the one to create a video game. And here now what I like to do is simply say, or how you do this actually is context video games and then add. And here of course we need a video game. Video game. And here then, come on, we add the video game like that. But with that, we are not done. what we have to do is then say await context save changes async, because with the add function, the change is only tracked, or as you can see in the description here, begins tracking the given entity, all right? But with save changes async, we really save the change here. So with that, only the new video game will be stored in our database. And yeah, what we can then do for this example actually is just maybe return all the video games. So here now we just return await and then get all video games like that. All right, I think this is nice. So let's go back to the client, and here now we say again, if the ID is null, then we know that we want to create something else. We want to edit something. So here we inject the HTTP client, HTTP, and this means that we get a result actually. We do not, yeah, we get a result. We don't really have to show it here because we want to show the result in the QuickGrid, or all the video games in the QuickGrid. So we could actually do not really have to return all the video games, but still, let's just do it that way. I think again, you get the idea here. You could now display all the games, or you could navigate back to the main page where we see the QuickGrid, the grid, or the list of the video games. Totally up to you, of course. So let's just say await HTTP post as a JSON async, and here now we call API, and then also a video game. It's a post, and we send the game here, and that's already it. All right, and what we can also do already, same thing, put, but there what we will do is we will change the route, because here we will add then the ID. So let's add that thing. All right, so with that, the handled submit is actually already done. So let's just restart this. We've got the edit part here, so go back and add video game. And here now we create breakout, for instance, also done by Atari, actually by Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs. Crazy, right? And that was in the year 1976. We hit save. You do not really get any feedback, but when we now go back to video games, we see breakouts. And there it is. Worked. Isn't that nice? So now, next step again would be to change that, right? Update maybe. So in our video game controller, again, add another method. Already told you that, but maybe you used the time code. So we are now doing the put, and here on the client, I'm using the put as JSON async, but regarding the URI, it's API video game and then the ID. So I'm really adding the ID here, and this has to be represented in the API as well. So here now it's not only HTTP put now for the update, but also the ID in the route. And how could you do that? Well, we can add another route attribute similar to the actual class here, right? Or we combine these two, meaning the HTTP request method and the route, with parentheses. We can just say, I want to see in curly braces the ID here, and that'll be the ID here as well. So now what we say is we update, let's call this add also, update video games int ID a video game. And the first thing is I'd like to check or get the video game from the database. So var db video game would actually be await and then context video games find async ID. So that's the one from the database. All right. Now what we can do just for fun, if this thing is null, we return a not found. Okay, we can then say this video game does not exist. All right, but if we get it, then what we can do is we just override the properties manually, meaning that the db video game title now is the video game title, the given video game title, the video game release year is in fact the video game release year, and the last thing would be the publisher, same thing. And in the end, again, we save everything, and if you want, return all the video games back. But the thing is, before this makes sense regarding the UI, we also have to implement getting a single video game, right? And this is where the route and the HTTP request methods make more sense, even here in the get all video games call, because we will then have two get calls. So when we now copy this and say we only want to return one single video game to display it in the or on the edit page, so get video game with an ID, we now add HTTP get again with the ID here as a route ID it is, because if we don't do that, again, we would have two HTTP get calls and the web API would not know which one to use when we only say, okay, we use the route API video game, and then the HTTP request method is get, again, same route, API doesn't know what is happening. So here now what we want to return is actually that stuff. So here now, wait, here now we say, give me that one and the DB video game. All right, I think this makes sense. Now in the edit video game, we use another lifecycle method to get the current game. And if you paid attention in the first part, now we have a parameter and we want to check if we get the ID, we have an ID provided. So now we would not use the on initialized, we would use on parameter set async. All right. And in here now we say if ID is not null, then our game would be await HTTP get from JSON async only a video game with now the route API video game, and again there it is, the ID, that one. This could actually be null, so maybe we ask if the result is not null, then game is the results. Okay, let's try that. There we are. This worked so far. This is nice. Say edit, Tetris 2, save. Do not really see any feedback again, but here we see Tetris 2. Maybe we can change that real quick. So let's just inject the navigation manager again. Navigation manager. And here we say navigation manager, navigate to video games. Actually, let's do that here as well. So just put this here. All right. Restarts. And now let's fix Tetris again. Remove that. It's safe. There we are. And this looks way better, right? Awesome. So now only delete is left. For that, maybe just add another button here. But we have to check if, again, the ID is not null. Then we add another button. Very important, this is type button, not submit. I think this is danger, and here we say delete. And on click, we call delete video game. And now let's say async task delete video game. We have the ID, so we just call await HTTP delete async with the route API video game, and again the given ID. And when this is done, we go back here. All right. And in the controller, we copy this. And this is now the delete request methods. Call this delete. We only need the ID. And if this is the case, then we say context video games remove db video game, save changes, and everything's fine. Okay, restart. All right, we added breakout, so let's try to edit, delete it. Yeah, this is not nice, but anyways, delete, and it's gone. All right, that's it. Sorry if the second part was a bit more messy or messier. It is really, really late, at least for me, with a baby and a toddler. So I hope I find some hours of sleep now. 3 hours would be nice. And yeah, apart from that, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Again, source code available for all my patrons. Thank you so much. Check out the video description. If you liked this tutorial and learned something, I would really appreciate it if you hit the like button. Maybe even subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for watching. And I hope I see you next time. Take care.